Hi, everybody. Today we are returning to one of our very first exercises, botanical studies in watercolors. We'll be using the same tools, watercolors, soft brushes, and textured paper, but this time we are taking that same familiar concept and trying to bring something new to the mix. It's a way to revisit our early works and see what we can add to them with what we know now. If you haven't tried this technique yet, it's very straightforward. I always suggest starting with something simple like this Fern, just to get the feel for the material and the surface you're painting on, because from the second attempt onwards, you'll already have a sense of how the material behaves. So I began by sketching the design using watercolor pencils because it activates with water and blends perfectly once we start the painting. Then all we need to do is control pressure and release to define how thick and thin we want each shape to appear. So this is a very simple, but it's a very nice style, and it works best when the shapes don't overlap. So it's very flat, okay? And the forms can be irregular, but the edges should remain sharp. That's what conveys intentionality. Notice that I'm not using watercolor in the traditional sense, but then again, there is not a right way. There's only the traditional way and the personal way. And today we are exploring the personal, okay? So even though these compositions are far simpler than our latest exercises, this video isn't about doing less. It is about seeing more. I often think about how easily we chase complexity as we learn more, as if there's no room to keep exploring something we have already begun to master. There is a misconception that simplicity equals something less valuable, when in truth, simplicity can be one of the most sophisticated choices we make as artists. To simplify means to remove the noise, the decoration, the unnecessary, and focus on what truly matters. In simplicity, we rediscover freedom. When we choose to do something simple, even though we are capable of doing more, that's not limitation. That's mastery. That's power. That's control. That is you saying to your work, I know what I'm doing, and this is what I want to do. When we create from that place of clarity, even a single leaf, one small petal, a single stem can hold deep meaning. For those of you who just starting your artistic journey or perhaps feeling blocked or uncertain, I want to remind you, you don't always have to move forward in a straight line. Sometimes the way through is a small step back, a return to something familiar, something simple. That's not regression, that's reflection, okay? Often we discover that the reason we struggle with something new isn't because we lack talent, but because there is something unfinished, something waiting for closure in an earlier stage of our journey. We often want to rush ahead to the next project, to the next technique, to the next big idea. And sometimes the reason we struggle at that next stage is because a previous chapter is still awaiting for our attention. Maybe there was something we didn't quite resolve, a lesson we skipped, a fear that we avoided, a detail that we overlooked. So when we take the time to return to those moments, we give ourselves permission to complete that circle. And that doesn't necessarily mean a step backwards. Rather, it's a form of grounding, a way to reconnect with the essence of creating without the pressure or the expectation. It means finishing a chapter we once left unfinished. So there is real value in look back at where we started. When we revisit our early works with the eyes we have now, we can see how much we've grown, not only in skill, but in confidence, in understanding, in everything. And that's the only person you should compare your work with, your earlier self. You don't measure progress by how close your work gets to any other artist. You measure it by how far you've come in your own journey. So try to go back to your beginnings from time to time. Revisit old works, repaint them, rethink them, refeel them. Try them with different materials as we are doing today. You may find that those early pieces still have lessons to teach you because sometimes the most profound progress isn't found in mastering new techniques. It is in rediscovering the joy that made us want to paint in the first place. And these are the results of what we've done today. I hope you've learned something new today, and that as we complete this exercise, you will take the moment to reflect on your own creative path. What was one of your first exercises? What would it look like if you painted it again today? With all the experience, patience, and courage that you've gained since then. As always, keep on practicing and thank you for joining us.